So one thing I'd say is don't jump the gun on certain things, right? Like saying that goes as your network is your net worth, right? Sometimes not having working experience is better as well because you don't get bogged down on specific ideas or ways of doing things. Experience, find a job, and then you need a job to get experience, right? Try to do a bit of research on how your competitors are marketing. Try harder. So because this is not an easy journey, but it's something that you really can do.
I would like to warmly welcome all of you to the very first episode of our podcast series, Navigating the Software Startup Journey, a founder's guide to building a software startup. I'm Kimali Abhinayaka and I will be your host for today's session. For today's session, we have a very interesting guest. He's a CEO, founder, tech enthusiast, and a tech entrepreneur. He's also the CEO and founder of Synapse AI Labs, a company known for creating human-centric AI experiences. And one of their key products is Common Pool. It is an application that helps companies analyze what people are talking about them online. It turns conversations into actionable insights, which is very useful for companies. And he was also featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 in Asia. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest for today's session. It is Mr. Nikin M. It is lovely to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And also, congratulations on your Forbes
Thank
recognition. So I'll actually jump into our first question. According to your perspective, who's Nikin Matararachi and how has your experience been?
Right, so in my perspective, Nikin Maharaj is someone that likes tech. I've always loved tech from the time I was in school to my uni life and so on. I've always been enthusiastic about tech and about AI. I think I remember quite fondly when I was in school during my O-levels, I was quite interested about learning about AI-driven cars or self-driven cars rather, and the advancements that we could see. That's sort of why I went into the AI industry as well. And I'm quite happy about how it turned out and all the decisions I've made.
Okay. And also, when it comes to Synapse Labs, when I went through the company and everything, it said it likes to have a human-centered approach. Can you tell us a bit about how you came across the idea for Synapse Labs?
Right. So Synapse AI Labs was built around the product Common Pool initially. So it was initially a product based business that we built. And one of the approaches that we wanted to take was making it human-centric, or even looking at a localization for a key USP that we provided. So one of the issues that we noticed is that a lot of the products of the US-based or European-based markets target to those larger markets, to those larger demographics, whereas countries like Sri Lanka and smaller nations of the world tend to get overlooked when products are being built. They're not targeted towards them and they're not built for them. So what we wanted to do is bring the tech back into those smaller nations and make it more accessible to everyone. So that is one of the key concepts behind Common Pool as well. One of the things that we always focus on, hyperlocalization and building products that help the local community and also smaller nations, smaller demographics to use.
Okay. You said you came across the idea and you built this. And when it comes to building a product, you sometimes need help from other people. How did you come across the proper people to help you, mentor, and so on?
Right. So I'd say it's a very important question, and it's very, very important to pick the right people, right? So one thing I'd say is don't jump the gun on certain things, right? Like, for example, when you're building a product, you might be quite keen to take it to market, and because of that, you might take certain decisions that are quick, or you might not partner up with the right people, might not hire the right people, and so on. But I think one of the key things is identifying talent, identifying the correct partners, and then teaming up with them, giving it an equal share of commitment, equal share of responsibility, and also making sure that you clearly outline what each of your objectives are, each of your responsibilities are, and so on upfront, and having those discussions upfront so that you can then build a better product and ultimately succeed as a product or as a company. I think at an initial stage, getting to know the correct people, building your networks can be very important. I think saying that goes as your network is your net worth, right? So building that network does go a long way. Whether it's your tech related network that you build from your colleagues you might have had at uni, or you might have met along the way, or whether it's business side of things, helping you to find funding, or helping you to do your marketing, do your sales side of things. You need to find the correct people and position them well. So I think that's one of the key areas that you'd have to focus on initially as well.
Okay. When it comes to mentorship, did you receive any help from any mentors, and how did you approach them?
Right. Yeah. I did receive quite a lot of help from quite a variety of mentors. So initially, there were mentors that helped me at the very early stages, and then also through our partner, our funding, and so on as well. We did receive mentorships from those relevant accelerator programs, and then through cold outreach, as well as through my network and connections as well, we were able to get additional mentorship in different fields, right? So again, like I mentioned, not just in the tech side of things, but also in marketing, in terms of product positioning, and so on. We've had a lot of mentors along the way. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of them as well. Without their help, Synapse AI Labs wouldn't be where it is at the moment. And I think getting that correct mentorship and getting the correct advice is very important for founders.
In Synapse AI Labs, when you were building it, what were some of the hardships that you went through, and how did you overcome them?
Right. So I think one of the key issues that a lot of founders would face is trying to balance your time and trying to find the necessary resources to manage the business side of things. So one issue that I see founders face is actually not having the correct mindset towards the startup, because some try to do it as a part-time opportunity, which might not be the correct approach to it, because you might need to give it your all, right? So you need to be ready to give all of your effort into your startup when building it, and be ready and able to put all of that effort into it, rather than making it a part-time gig. However, that being said, another issue that I see a lot of founders face is not having the ability to maintain your runway, right? So runway is essentially the funding to keep the startup going without necessarily going bankrupt. But that's in the sense of the company, but also in the sense of the founder themselves being able to manage their own personal finances without needing to rely on the startup or the product itself at the very early stage is very important, because that's actually one place where I was quite lucky in, because I was doing my PhD at Monash, and that included a full scholarship, including stipends and so on as well. So I was quite all right in that sense, and I was very lucky in that sense, because I was able to manage my own personal finances and not need to worry about that aspect and put that burden on the company. And that gave me a lot of leverage, because then I could grow the company without having to worry about myself. So finding a solution like that can be very important. I understand it might not be for everyone, it might not be very easy, but these 2 points that I mentioned do seem quite contradictory, right? You cannot do a job or do this as a part-time gig, nor can you nor do you need to have the finances. So finding a solution which suits you and your specific needs, your company's specific needs, your startup specific needs, is very important at this very early stage, because what I see a lot of founders face issues in is maintaining that flow over time, because building a startup isn't something that's done over a day or a month, right? It takes months or maybe sometimes years to get your product to market. For us specifically, we started building Common Pole in July of 2021. As a business, we started fully operating in September 2021, but we got our first clients in December of the following year, in 2022. So we had to have enough runway for about a year and a half to maintain that flow, because if not, you would run out of steam, and then your startup would essentially fail at before it could reach its full potential. So that's, I think, one of the key lessons that I've seen as one of the most important things that I've learned from this journey.
It's really interesting to hear about that as well. So while you were talking, I have one question that actually I came across. So in Sri Lanka, sometimes older generation tends to say you need experience before you start something.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Before starting a startup, does the startup owner have to have working experience?
I would say no, especially if you're looking at a tech startup. I wouldn't say you need working experience per se. Sometimes not having working experience is better as well, because you don't get bogged down on specific ideas or ways of doing things. So in certain senses, not just tech entrepreneurship, even in other businesses as well, sometimes being inexperienced does have its own benefits. But that being said, more than experience, what I feel is necessary is your willingness to learn, right? So if you're willing to acquire those skills that are necessary, and go out of your way to find solutions or find new ways of solving a problem, then you'd be able to be a successful startup founder or build a successful startup. Experience, I think, is important in a certain sense, but not necessary in any way.
Because nowadays, a lot of parents are also pushing down on their kids, saying you might need experience when they want to start.
Exactly. I think that's a issue with the job market as well, right? You need experience to find a job, and then you need a job to get experience, right? So yeah, that's an issue that a lot of people face, and I think there is a bit of stereotype and intergenerational difference there as well. I feel it's changing quite a bit. It's quite a lot different in the West, but I believe it's changing quite a bit in the Sri Lankan market as well.
With time, it'll be really great. So the next few questions are mainly targeted to help our new startup owners to get an idea about how they can start a startup and to solve certain issues that they have. So when you're going to start a startup, you come across an idea. But the next issue is you have to make sure whether this is a proper idea or whether this is a bad idea. How can a new startup owner validate such an idea?
Right. So product validation is very important. One thing I was telling some of my interns just last week, I believe, was exactly about this. So we recently launched a product called Mentioned by AI, which is essentially a tool that helps brands monitor their performance or brand mentions on AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on. So what I was telling my team is that let's put some MVP out, right, a minimum viable product out first, and then try to validate that product, see what the reception is, do a bit of marketing, see what the reception is for that product, and then build upon that, right? Because investing a lot of time and money and effort into a product is pointless if you don't get that validation. And the best type of validation is actually seeing your sales grow, right? So a lot of founders I see, especially tech founders, right? We like to make things perfect. We like to build our product, and we tend to get tied up on the product itself. So I think one thing that we could learn, or one thing that we should learn rather, is to be happy with what you have, and build on that once you have product validation. So put an MVP out, a minimum viable product out, and then see how that how the reception is. Of course, you can get sort of validation from speaking to businesses, speaking to your end consumers before you build the product. That is important too. But the ultimate validation comes is whether people are willing to buy, because at certain points people might say this looks very interesting, but then when you go to them with the financials, when you offer them to purchase the product, they might not end up doing it. And that is where you get the final proper validation. And yeah, so build MVP, go to market, and build up on that. Even when it comes to features as well. So one thing that we've learned is that as a tech founder, there are certain features that I find very interesting personally. I see that my dev team finds very interesting because it's maybe cutting edge or revolutionary in terms of the tech behind it. However, when we take it to market, the reception is mediocre. It doesn't fit the hype that we've built around it. So sometimes we tend to be in that bubble of thinking that what we've done is great. It might be great in reality. It might not be correctly timed. It might be not what the market needs. So going to market and then testing it out, validating it, and then developing it further would be the best strategy there. I think it's something that even not just startups, large companies also have issues with, right? If you remember, I think about 10 years ago, Google released Google Glass. It wasn't really, maybe 10, 20 years ago, right? Google released Google Glass. It was revolutionary. It was great tech, but it wasn't ready. The market wasn't ready for it. So maybe you're just too early. So just wait a bit and see how it goes.
What are your thoughts on research before developing a product? How important is that?
You're referring to market research, is that?
Market, and also maybe a bit of like the product research about what
Right.
you want to build.
Yeah, so of course, product research is essential, right? You need to identify what other competitors are out there, what sort of solutions are there at the moment, whether it's a direct competitor or whether it's even, for example, if you're automating a process, it could be a manual process, right? That could be a competitor. So one thing that we learned is in the social listening game, it's not just social listening tools that are our competitors, but there are also agencies that do this with manual labor that also are competitor. So trying to identify the correct competitors and then doing the proper product to market fit is important. Trying to see if your product actually fits what the requirement is, whether the features that you have are correct. Because like I said earlier as well, you might be inclined to build new revolutionary product, but if you look at most startups or that have scaled quite well, it's not because they've built something revolutionary. It's because they've done something slightly better than some other product that's currently there. So if you can iteratively improve on an existing product, that should be sufficient. So look at what they're doing, see where you can build a slight improvement, and then take it to market. That's what I'd say.
And also, like when taking to market, you need to have MVP. So to build that, you need people and you need a support system. What are your thoughts on getting a support system? What should our new owners consider, and what should their first hire be?
Right. So that's sort of a difficult question in the sense it really depends based on the product itself, right? So from my experience, when we built Common Pole, it was initially just me and a couple of others that built the product. So after that, what we really needed as a first hire was to the marketing side, right? So that's where we hired, because that was our need, because we didn't have a marketing background, we didn't have the connections. And for example, in my case, I wasn't even in the country, right? So we were targeting to market in Sri Lanka, but having an offshore presence wouldn't really work in that case. So the initial hire was for the marketing side. However, again, it might depend. If you have a product where you don't have a complete set of technical skills to complete or build, then you'd need to hire additional help, or you might have to partner with someone else that can bring in those expertise, whether it's, let's say, for example, if you are a good UX designer and you don't know how to build the back end of the product, then you need to partner up with someone that can do that, or vice versa, right? And that's something that, again, like I mentioned previously as well, finding the correct partner is also very important, and having those structures in place is very important, because a lot of the time, another issue that I see is that people don't put in place the correct legal founding as well. So you don't have a company registered, you don't have the shareholding agreement, and so on, and that runs into problems later on down the line. So having it all done at the very beginning is quite important. It's not a very difficult thing to do. I understand it's not something that you might be very familiar with. It's not something you're taught for sure. Something that we should change in the education system. But then it's something that is very important for a startup to be founded. So yeah, having the correct people in place depends based on your organization structure, the type of product you're building, and so on.
Okay. So actually, my next question was about the other people who helped you. You said you had a group of people with you. So how did you come across them? And you also mentioned the contracts and all of that. Sometimes, in certain cases, it's hard to find good partners. What are some key factors that you look into if you're going to take a partner?
Right. So to be honest, for Synapse Labs, when we built Common Pool, it was mainly myself, and then I had a couple of friends that were able to help me with the UI UX side of things, and some of the DevOps side of things. So in terms of mainly advice and support in terms of troubleshooting and so on. So in my experience, I don't have a co-founder experience, but from what I have seen in the market and from what I've heard from other colleagues and so on, is that identifying the co-founder is the most crucial thing that is there for your business, right? Because it's a do or die. If you find the wrong co-founder, if you don't have the correct sharing ability, right? If you aren't able to share the correct workloads, then you are going to be facing quite a lot of trouble, because if let's say one person is doing all of the work, then it's not a very balanced relationship. It might be fine. You might be able to work things out. You might be able to renegotiate the SHA or so on, but that's something that you'd have to be open to talk and discuss with your co-founders, and really look at what each of you bring into the business, right? As an individual, what you are able to bring in, what skills you bring in, what contacts you bring in, the networking opportunities, the funding maybe, and so on. So put all of that in the table, discuss it very upfront, and have that plan built initially.
Funding came across, so I have a few questions about funding as well. So when it comes to a new startup, what sort of an approach can they take to secure funding?
Right. So funding is a bit of an issue in Sri Lanka if we look at it, because there's not a lot of VCs, there's not a lot of funds out there for tech startups in the country. So that's why we see a lot of startups go abroad and find funding elsewhere. But that being said, what I'd say is take every opportunity you can, whether it's utilizing your network to the fullest, whether it's trying to bootstrap it somehow, right? That's also an option. So initially, Common Pool was, or Synapse Labs was bootstrapped, right, until we received our initial funding, and so on. So again, those two might not be an option for everyone. You might not have the correct networks or the resources to bootstrap. Take every opportunity. There are a lot of accelerators out there, a lot of angel VCs and so on that are out there. Reach out to everyone as much as possible. Then try to reach out through your contacts, because you might not know someone, but your contacts might know someone. So reach out as much as possible. Cold call them, cold email them. That's all fine, right? As long as you have a great product, they'd be happy to take a few minutes with you. Try to identify what your product is, understand about yourself, and build the product with you, right? Fund you and build the product with you. One small thing I'd like to add is build your personal brand as well, right? Because a lot of the funders, whether it's VCs or accelerators, fund for the product itself, but also do look at the person behind the product or the team behind the product. So building that core team or that core individual's personality and the personal branding is very important as well, so that you put not just your product but yourself as well into the mix when you're asking for funding from whoever, whether it's a VC or an angel investor or so on.
That is interesting. Personal branding is also very important in that case. So let's say, okay, the funding is also there and you have an MVP, and the next thing is reaching out to customers. So how can our new startup owners reach out to customers better? Because some of them are struggling to reach out to that audience.
Right. So again, it's a very highly dependent question, right? Because are you a B2C startup? Are you a B2B startup? Are you targeting the Sri Lankan market? Are you targeting a foreign market? Are you a highly digital startup where you can directly sell through, digital marketing, or do you need to have sales calls? All of these questions need to be answered based on your product. So understanding what your product is, having your team understand the product as well, that's very important, because you as a founder might understand the product, but let's say the marketing team might be on a bit of a different page, or your product team might be on a different page. So getting the entire team on board with the product that you have and the strategy that you're planning on using is very important. So that being said, what you can do is try to do a bit of research on how your competitors are marketing, right? So if you're a B2C product and your competitors are doing a lot of digital outreach, digital marketing, SEO, SEM, and so on, then that might be the best opportunity for you to do as well. However, let's say it's a sales sort of marketing strategy that you need to use, whether you're reaching to enterprise customers, right? If you're reaching to enterprise customers, then mostly you'd need is direct sales, whether it's cold emails, reaching out through CRMs, or whether it's through networking events and so on. It varies based on from brand to brand, but identifying that strategy is important, and also adapting as you go is also very important, because one thing we learned is that the strategy we used at the very beginning doesn't work right now. So initially what we did is to enterprise customers, whether it's through cold outreach, networking, or using our contacts. And then what we realized is once we want to go to a more international audience, a more international market, then we need to go for a more digital-centric approach. So adapting with the times is also very important as well.
Okay, lastly, do you have any advice for our new startup owners?
Right, so I think we looked at a lot of key points today. I'd say try harder. So because this is not an easy journey, but it's something that you really can do. You can achieve it. So just try.
Thank you, Nikin, for joining with us today. Your experience and all the knowledge you shared is truly helpful for a lot of the new startup owners who's watching us today. And thank you for everyone who tuned in for our session today. And I hope you guys found this session to be interesting and knowledgeable. And also, if you're interested in new innovations, tune in. And also we have our exhibition, IIT Cutting Edge, which is scheduled for 17th of June 2025 at Temple Trees. We hope to see you there.